thank you so much for tuning in. Today we're going to start the prep work for this Yamaha R1, which is right behind me. It's my wife's bike, and it's got quite a lot of damage and stone chips on the panels and the bodywork, which is not acceptable. And this is what we've got right here. It's my wife's bike, so theoretically she should be doing all the prep work, but she's run away and left it to me. However, we've got the belly pan's the worst one. All this scraping down here, and there's a lot of stone chips. You might not see them on the camera, but it has got a lot of stone chips in there. Some of these would have just buffed out, really, but we're going to repaint it. We've got the colour mixed already, and I think we are going to go 98 star with the graphics. I mean, yeah, some might argue and say it should be put back to original, with it being a 2001, but I love the look of the 1998 model. I couldn't get one, not with 5,000 miles on it, so we've decided, I mean, these are only stickers. It's not a big job to change the stickers if someone wants to in the future. These indicators are going as well. But anyway, let's get to it, let's get started. Right, now that took a lot longer than intended. The graphics along here were fine, they just heated up and peeled off. I'm going to get this residue off here with some carburetor cleaner, but the YZF stickers and the X-Sub stickers, they were, well, they were tough to remove. I had to try with a Stanley knife blade, they were just chipping off, they wouldn't peel. I tried with a heat gun, they were foiled back so they took the heat from that. I've resorted to sanding them down with this 500 grit. I didn't really want to take it down like that, but you know, I'm going to paint it anyway. So I'll crack on with the tank next. It's very thin, this paint. It appears that there is no primer at all. I've only basically touched it very slightly, and yet there's nothing there hardly. Look, it's like they painted it directly onto the metal. Right, stone chips. I'm going to show you what's happening underneath a stone chip. Now, there was a stone chip here. I've just drawn it back to metal. This stone chip was literally just this little bit here. But underneath it, you can see that there's quite a bit of rust. This is what happens underneath a stone chip and how rust draws in bigger. If you get stone chips on your bonnet or bike anywhere on metal parts, it may look tiny, but underneath it moisture sets in and rust begins. So in order to fix it, you've got to sand it right back. Now I've taken that right back, and what you can see here is pitting. So that's what happens underneath a stone chip when you're involving metal. Okay, so they're all sanded and prepped. I've just got a little stone chip here, well, a scratch actually. This was quite a big scratch. It's gone quite deep, so I'm not going to sand that anymore. I'm going to put some knifing putty on that and then go over it. It's damaged the plastic, so if I keep sanding that, it's going to wear it out too much. I've just been looking for any of these tiny stone chips here, which I'll go over again. This one's looking okay. I'm trying to get rid of any, it doesn't matter about this, but any shiny spots like this, that means there's some clear coat there, it's been missed, low spots. But they're just up there about ready. The side panels, the tank. Same again, I've gone over the whole tank. Make sure there's nothing missed. There's some shiny spots on this, but I'm just waiting for it to dry. I've gone over it with a cloth there just to get rid of all that dust. I think there's another little rust spot there, another little stone chip there, so that'll have to be dealt with. That's what I'm looking for. I'm going to get some zinc primer on that, and I'm going to lightly sand over the lettering just to get it back to white again, and then I'm going to apply my colour, get it nice and even. Then again I'll go over this with 1000 grit very lightly, not to get rid of any sticker, just to bring the colour back. And that way when when a blending is done, I can just clear coat over it and you won't even know it was there. I'll deal with that. I'll have a good check round it, make sure there's no more, and then I'll do the nose cone. So we've got this here. This is the only mark on it, which is a shame. I'm going to remove this and get that repaired. A deep stone chip there. No, I'm busy. Busy. We're busy. We're not coming in. Where you gone? Rambo. Right, so I'm now on to the worst part of a bike you could possibly paint, in my opinion, the belly pan. These are the parts of the fairings or the bike that... Will you give up? I'm trying to record. I'm trying to record. Right, I'll try again. Rambo. Where's that dog? This, like I said, is the worst part of a bike to paint, in my opinion, because it gets all the road rash, all the stone chips, and any oil from the chain gets under here. It's a mess. If you're going to get any problems or defects in the paint, it's going to be on this. We've got a nasty wound here. It looks like someone's dropped the bike over. That's what's caused that. So we'll get rid of this here. It's got a bit of a blister on it. We'll see if we can take that down. Right. Ah! Oh, Rambo. That's disappeared quite nicely. So I'm going to give that a little bit more sanding.
Really got me stuck, then you walked away. While I was in the shock, you would drift astray. For all the things you told me that weren't true. I've got one or two things to tell you. You never had your mind in the place I was. You never stood behind when I fell because you let me be the one, then you leave me blue. I've got one or two things to tell you.
There we go. I've got some electrical contact cleaner just to break away some of that dirt and grease and oil. But you gotta get rid of all that, otherwise you're faced with problems when you come to painting. Because all it takes is you to touch any of this side and transfer a bit of that oil, should I say, and then you've got a little bit of a problem with your paint finish. Right, then it's time to get some primer on this Yamaha R1 tank. We're going to get some zinc primer on all these exposed metal areas, and then perhaps build some layers up so we can give it a bit of a flat it off, and then apply some colour, start applying some colour. I want to hopefully salvage these stickers. I have got a sticker kit, it's arrived, but we're going to try and salvage these stickers like I said before. A little bit of practice for a spot repair. Okay, let's get some paint on it. I'm just going over this with my tap cloth. Get rid of any dust that's settled on it. Put that to one side. I'm using an aerosol for this because I don't want to be mixing up primer just for this little job. Now I'm going to apply this on, but there's a reason why I've not masked this up around it. If I'd have masked it up around it, when I remove the masking tape, then I'm going to get like a square I need to sand out, so putting extra work on. What I'm going to do, just for a spot repair, is just try and go dust it in like this. So I'll let that flash off, I'll give it a wipe over and then add some more. Right, so that's enough primer on there now. I've put 3 coats on. I'm going to wet it and going to wet sand it now, get it nice and smooth. The problem is what some people do, they will sand too much of the primer off and make it all thin. So when they're applying a base coat there, it then starts to crow's foot and crack and frazzle up. Some people think it's just a reaction due to contamination, but no, it's not. It's just that the thinners in the paint it eats through the thin layer of primer and causes that effect. So we're going to go a bit carefully just to get out any overspray, the whole tank, and then we'll apply some colour to it. One day I'll have my spray booth finished. I don't have to do this out on the shop floor. So I can just see there my plan is working. If I give that a wipe, there's no more primer left on it. Obviously when I come to putting the blue colour on, it will go over this, but I can then whip over it to remove that blue and put my clicker on, so I don't have to replace these stickers. I've made sure my hands are clean, I've washed them, there's no grease on my hands. I'm going over this slowly, not too quickly, because you can create static and attract more dust. Be careful of little cloths flapping around. Okay, so we don't have to worry about it too much. We're only putting primer on. Because we're putting primer on, we're going to sand it down again. Now, if I'm using epoxy primer, if I'm doing a big job like a car, for instance, or a complete colour change or a complete respray, in-depth job, I will use epoxy primer. Use hardener for it, filler primer maybe, but if it's a small job like this, then just you're going to use the can. these are all fully primered now. I'm happy with the job. I'm going to leave that to cure all night. I ain't going to go sanding it now. I'll go over it with 500 grit tomorrow. I'm going to tidy up. Yeah, that's about it for today. So tomorrow I'll get these flattened off, check for any low spots, and then we'll get some colour whacked on them. Exciting. So welcome back everybody. Today we're in the booth, well, my partly finished spray booth, getting ready to paint these panels. I've started sanding the primer. I need to wipe over these with some tack cloths and get all the dust off them. I've got that one to do on the floor. The tank's practically ready. Cracking on with this one, getting this prepped for paint. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's absolutely pouring it down outside. I've not looked out the door, but it feels like a tropical rainstorm out there. That was the huge stone chip that I filled in with some knifing putty or some finishing putty. You can't feel that now, it's nice and flat. I've not primered these. I'm just going to go straight in with the colour. I'm not pressing on, I'm just etching the surface. That's all I'm doing. When I have gone over all the flat spots, I'll use my hands to get over these, because if I'm not too careful on these bits, you'll sand right through them, especially on these edges here. That's where you can cut right through. I'm not particularly going in one direction. I like to go in a crisscross pattern. Some people like to do this wet, but I do it dry. I hate sanding, I hate prepping, but I love painting. I really do love it, it's quite therapeutic.
Okay, so we've got the colour all mixed up for us, thanks to Rotherham Refinishing Supplies. The original colour would be a 3-stage colour, where we would have primer, base coat, then a layer of pearl, followed by the clear coat. But the mix this colour form is scan the panel, and I'd say it's pretty much 99% accurate. I can do 3-stage colours, but it's a lot easier to blend when it's all mixed together. So I started putting the colour on already, halfway through. I do apologise, I've not filmed this from the beginning, but whilst recording I didn't realise that the camera was pointing too far down and you couldn't see what I was doing. So I've got the air pressure set to around about 15 psi, and all I'm doing is blending this colour now. The best way to apply metallics is to lightly dust the paint on in the end. That way you don't get clusters of metallic flakes. I kind of just lightly dust it and throw it on. Let the metallic land on the job. Obviously don't be too far away, otherwise it'll dry before it lands on the work. You can barely see that repair now. I started painting the repair first, just that little spot to cover. Then as it disappears, I start painting out and just blending that colour on. It's a good idea to just blow some air on your job as well. Get rid of that thinners, helps the thinners evaporate quicker. So I'm having a good look round that nose. Really happy with that. Beautiful finish. Set that air pressure. So I'm starting just dusting over the intricate parts, the holes, and I'll go through the edges before I put the full colour on. Get them filled up. Make sure you go around all your edges.
Right, so just a quick one to show you how this is going. Operation Save the Stickers is going brilliantly well. So I've started this side using 800 grit very carefully. Just simply, let me get this camera right, folding it over like this and then scratching the paint off just like that. It's all worked fine. I'm going to call it a night. Where's my rag? I'm going to call it a night. Come back at it in the morning and hopefully get some clear coat on that so you can see if I wet it, that's giving the effect of what it's going to look like with the clear coat on. Similar. Yeah, the plan worked. So a little bit of patience, but it'll work. Let's have a look here. And this obviously is going to blend pretty well. So we're all looking good. I usually wet it and see. You can't get an accurate effect, but wet it to see if it blends. Right, we'll continue with that tomorrow. Get this side done and we should be all ready to go.
I don't really depress my trigger fully on the gun. Kind of use it like a throttle. And sometimes I'll adjust my air pressure on the go. You can see where my thumb is placed over the fan adjuster. And sometimes I'll move that in and out as I'm going. Again, there we go. Painting all the slots and holes. I kind of sometimes don't look at the air pressure settings, I just know what it sounds like and what it feels like when you get used to it. So now all the edges are done, so I'm applying the colour. Just checking that I've got enough in there. You can see how light it goes on. After I've covered the panel, I'll go over it, dust the paint in all angles, crisscross angles, just to get that metallic flakes to blend. I'm going to mix a bit more thinners in that. It feels a bit thick, a bit heavy. So I do mix mine 2-to-1, but I always put around about 20% or 30% more thinners in. I kind of know how it feels. Every time I've applied a colour and the paint has flashed off, I'll wipe over it with some with a wet rag. Any little areas that's got like a defect in, I'll just lightly sand that out with 1000 grit. And wipe over it. When you're painting, I find that there's a light layer of dry dust that hits the panel. So in between coats, I always wipe down the panel, dry it off, and then re-tack cloth it. You can feel the texture on it. It feels quite coarse until you wipe it down. You get all that dust off. It's quite safe, don't worry about it. And then I'll apply more paint. Giving it one more last tack over. The base coat's the most important one. You don't want any flies especially, or hairs or fibres in there. So now I'm putting very light coats just to seal this colour. I'm barely pressing the trigger on the gun now. I don't want lines in it. It's actually a touch-up gun I'm using, but I'm kind of used to them. If we were painting a car, a bonnet, obviously I'd use a bigger gun, but you can just see that colour going on there. This is now a full wet coat. Still go over the edges in between. They're the most vulnerable areas. Keeping an eye on that hose. You don't want to drag it around and pull something over. Okay, one final tacking off. I'm really happy with the finish on these. So I'm just flying over the V piece.
Okay, so now I'm ready for clear coat on the tank and the fairing panels. They've all been done, and I'm really happy with the quality of the paint finish there. I've laid it on nice and thin. Well, I say thin. I've laid it on nice and light so I get that lovely texture. As you can see, there's not much orange peel in that base coat. Now, bear in mind, base coat should not be glossy. It should have a satin finish to it. It's the clear coat that makes it glossy. The stickers have turned out well on the Yamaha, you can see there. I'll give them one last look before I apply the clear coat, because once the clear coat goes on, you can't stop. The first coat or the first two coats are the most important, not to get any flies or dust in them. After that, if anything lands on it, I'll just keep going because I can sand them and buff them out. That's beautiful texture. That's what you want. That's what I want. I don't lay paint on thick. I just put more layers of fine mist paint on mine. I almost don't want to clear over it. There's not a speck of dust on this. That would be perfect for a satin finish. But right, let's get this done. Let's get this mixed.
So we're now going for the clear coat. I'm using the US Pro gun, a budget gun. Give it a tack off there. I've got a 1.4 tip on it. Layer that on wet. The most important coat on the clear coat is the first one or first two. You don't want anything landing in there, otherwise it'll show. I put 4 coats on because I'm going to cut it back with the 1500 grit and polish it up afterwards. I've got a full fan on this as well. The fan settings is on full. The air pressure is around about just under 20. You don't want the air pressure too high. It will atomise, but you don't want it too high, otherwise you're just kicking up overspray all over the booth. You'll end up clouding up the room with it. So usually after painting the first coat, I'll leave this around about 10 minutes and I'll come back to it. So when you mix a clear coat, I usually start at a 2:1 ratio, 2 parts clear to 1 part hardener. Then the thinners, I usually put around about 10% thinners or 20 in some cases. You don't need to put too much thinners in clear coat because the hardener does that job as well. If you get this too thin, then you're definitely going to get runs in it. Okay, thank you for watching. Hope you've learnt something interesting there. Very shortly we'll get on to part 3 where we'll start the cutting and buffing and polishing, then onto the assembly of the bike. I just can't wait to get it fired up and get it out on the road and test it out. So stay tuned, like and subscribe if you've not already, and I'll see you shortly for part 3.
I see now the sweet taste suddenly been exchanged for a clean slate. You really got me stuck, then you want